Alpha.
Hi there, welcome. Well, I'm James from Sony. I'm very lucky to have another James with me, great name, obviously. Another James with me this afternoon. So we've got James Matthews here, a filmmaker who's going to be sharing with us some of his thoughts about how he's got into what he's doing and the sort of equipment that he uses and the kind of creative element behind how he approaches his work. So James, welcome. Lovely to have you.
Really appreciate it.
How are things? All good with you?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, this year's and last year's very, very different to every other year that we've had in terms of the filmmaking or any space really. So, yeah, just it's a time to adapt, I guess, really. So I guess that's what we're all doing in the industry.
Absolutely, adaptability is such a key word at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, today we wanted to try and get a bit more under the skin of you know, how you become a videographer, how you make a living from it, really, I suppose, and learn a little bit about your journey. So the first question is obviously the natural question: how did you get into videography? What was it that drew you to it, and what sort of kit were you using when you started out? How did you approach it?
Right. So I've always been into art. I don't know what it is. I've always had that kind of artistic stuff. I was in every single art class. I was even in there at lunchtime. I was kind of that geeky artist bloke, you know, that was in kind of the art department at lunch. Slowly got my hands on a camera for the very first time. I think I was using like a 1000D at the time, like one of the most cheapest DSLRs you could get. And I started shooting stills originally. I started in stills. I don't shoot stills anymore, but I got my very, very first job as a nightclub photographer around a lot of different clubs in Essex, where I live. Some pretty like famous big clubs, and I was kind of well out of my depth at the time. Just turned 18. I was out taking photos of people having a good time in their clubs and whatever. And I had to then try and physically sell them a physical copy of the photo for a £5. And dealing with drunk people in places like that is not easy. So I actually think that was a bit of a blessing in disguise, because it kind of toughened me up a little bit, got me into a bit of sales. I was half a photographer and half a salesperson and half trying to dodge drinks and all of the chaos that goes on in clubs, you know. But then that slowly evolved into me just wanting to experiment with different types of photography, and then moving on to videography. So started playing around with different types of video cameras, some like JVC camcorders and things like that. And then I got myself my first, well, I used to sell sweets at school at sixth form, and I saved up enough money. I think it cost me 450 quid to get the Canon 550D at the time. And that was the very first camera that I ever shot video on. And then that slowly evolved into me moving over to the Sony system, got like the A7S, and then moved up to the Sony A7S Mark II. So that was kind of a slow transition over like 5 or 6 years, starting out from stills over to video. So yeah, that's kind of the start of the journey, I guess, for me in video.
And so once you kind of knew that it was video that was more of the discipline, I suppose, that you were interested in, what was the I guess what was the next kind of bit for you in terms of understanding? So you got your 7S Mark II. How were you then thinking, right, how do I make sure that this is sustainable and this is something that I can build a career around and make money from?
Absolutely. Well, I think that's something that you've got to think about when you're like 17, 18, 19 anyway. It's the kind of thing that is on everyone's mind about getting a job and actually earning a living. And I really, really didn't want to go and do a job that I hated. Like I couldn't kind of sit. Well, I used to go and fit carpets for my dad. My dad's got like a carpet company, and I used to do that, and I hated it. So I was like, I need to see if there's a way I can make a living out of making videos, because I just loved it. It was all I was doing in my spare time, making videos with mates, just taking videos of my dog. I'd take videos of anything. And I slowly realized that by accident, I was kind of making a name for myself as the video guy where I lived in my local area, be that on Facebook, on Instagram, or just in person, because I always had a camera on me. So I slowly kind of built up this affiliation of me. I wasn't really James anymore. I was James, the camera guy, you know? So that's kind of what I I guess that's kind of what I achieved by accident. So that was a way of me essentially branching out, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then slowly from there, a few people started approaching me and saying, "Oh, well, do you do this professionally? Because we're looking for a video for a wedding, or be it for our company, whatever it was at the time." People would slowly start just asking me these questions, and it made me think, well, hold on, maybe I can actually earn some money out of this. And then after that, I started approaching a few like local businesses that I had ideas for videos, and I thought, I've got this really cool idea for this. There was like a jeweler's near me in Shenfield, and I had a really cool idea about this guy going in, buying this ring for his girlfriend who he wants to marry. And I approached them with the idea, and they said, well, that sounds good, let's do it. So I'd done that job for free at the time. And slowly from there, little jobs just started trickling in after I was doing quite a lot of free jobs. So that is, I guess, how I took it from being like a hobby to it actually earning me some money, you know? So yeah, no, it's a cool little transition.
And then, so obviously that's given you that bit of security and so on and so forth. So how did you then sort of think about, what was your drive? Where did you see this going? How were you thinking, right, okay, this is great, but how do I take it to the next level? And I guess I mean that both on a business front, so commercial front, how you could maximize your opportunities to try and really drive what you're doing, but also on a creative front, how do you keep things fresh? How do you make sure that your creativity is not just ending up going down one route and pigeonholing you, I suppose, as this is what James does?
Got ya. Well, I think it's kind of, you've got to kind of weigh up the options. Like, do you want to? I guess when you first start out and you haven't really built a name for yourself on a creative level, just as a service. At the time, I built myself up as the guy who delivers a videography service, not James the storyteller or the creative, So it's kind of building up. I guess you've got to kind of build up a name for yourself as someone who creates their own ideas and their own stories, and you want to hire them for that instead of just their service, if that makes any sense. So there's kind of a transition, and it depends on what kind of clients you have. At the start, when you work with these tiny little companies, you do have somewhat of a creative input into their content, because a lot of them don't really know the kind of creative direction that they want to take their content. So you can kind of guide the content, put your own spin on it. But then as you slowly work your way up to these much bigger brands, it's a lot harder to keep the creative control yourself, So a lot of these big brands and companies have got their own ideas, as they should do. They've got their own campaign ideas, their own direction for the story and where they want to take their brand. And you slowly do lose a little bit of that. But I managed to kind of find a little middle ground for myself where, and this all started from kind of posting my own work online. So I started my own YouTube channel. I've got a YouTube channel that I essentially create short films, do lots of tips, tricks, techniques, and I built quite a cool little community on there of filmmakers that we just want to kind of learn and grow together, And I think because I built up that exposure online, I've got more brands now reaching out to me, wanting me to create them my own piece of content with their brand integrated into it. So I'm essentially being able to create my own idea, my own story. I'm able to tell my own agenda, as it were, but mixed in with their brand. So it works both ways. And I think that's quite a unique position to put yourself in. I'm quite lucky in the fact that I get to do that now. But it did take me a good 6 years or so to build up some kind of presence or exposure for my work online. And I think in today's day and age, I couldn't recommend that enough. Maybe 5-10 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought of it. But in today's day and age, with the amazing opportunities that we've got online, I'd really recommend doing something like that, especially if you want to try and hold on to your creative control. So yeah, that's something that I'd really recommend.
So how often, I guess, are you able to do projects that are, for yourself, like a passion project or something like that, which still actually you are able to then translate into something that's like a show reel or something that could be of use for showing to a potential commercial client?
Well, I guess I don't actually get that many, I say not that many opportunities, because I still like to work with loads of brands that have solid briefs. I do still enjoy doing that. Just a client coming to me, giving me a solid brief of what they want, and I go out and I deliver it. I just enjoy that kind of service to client interaction still, and making like customers and clients happy. But I guess I probably get the opportunity about 4 times a year to create my own piece for online, like for say on YouTube or whatever platform, with my own content, but with a brand integrated with it. So maybe 4 or 5 times a year. And I'm really fortunate to be able to do that, you know. I guess it's just the fact that I've kind of got my own platform with my own audience on it, and with that you get quite a big reach, so it actually promotes the brand at the same time. So yeah, about 3 or 4 times a year, because it does, when I go into these passion projects, I storyboard them, I kind of I'd spend so long on the pre-production, the music, the kind of the subjects, the locations, all of this kind of stuff, and then we'll go on this trip or this journey to try and capture this story or this film. So it's not very easy to pump out loads of them a year, and I wouldn't really want to pump out loads of them a year. I'd rather do 2 or 3 really I guess really strong stories for me that I feel like I've told the way I want to tell them, rather than doing 50 once a week films that I kind of like but I wasn't super happy with.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. It's quality over quantity, right?
100%.
And yeah, I think as well, like you even mentioned there about music and stuff like that. All of these kind of, you know, when you're thinking about the brief, I guess all of these creative elements are critical to how you're then going to translate what's in your head and deliver it how you want. So absolutely. How has the equipment from the, you know, the 7S II, how have things evolved for you to keep up with what your clients are requiring, but also to keep up with your view on creativity?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's I think a lot of the times it comes down to, if you're happy with, if you're confident with the gear that you're using, you're going to make the best content. I don't think it's any more than that. Don't get me wrong, there are certain tools that are going to allow you to get different techniques, different styles, different looks, and give you the ability to create different kinds of content. But at the end of the day, if you know your gear inside and out and you focus on the story, you focus on what you're trying to actually tell, I think that's the most important thing. For me, over the years, the thing that's kind of become the forefront and the most important thing for me is audio, I guess. And having the ability to directly go into the camera with audio is probably one of the biggest things for me now, especially on a lot of client work where I'm doing lots of interviews, lots of performances, those kind of things. So having solid audio is really important. And I'm a really big fan of color grading and grading the image to the way that I want it to be displayed to the audience. So color grading in a really moody tone that will give off kind of a dark, eerie feel to the audience, or creating it really light and kind of airy, the kind of color grade you'd want to do on a wedding, for example. You want to keep it quite dreamy, so that the couple have got that memory forever, that it was just a dream of a day, you know. So having like higher bit rates, so having the now 10-bit that we're now getting in, so for example the A7S, the FX3, the FX6, FX9, and the ability to go 12-bit raw externally is a big thing for me, because then I can really push my image. You know, I don't have to just rely on having quite a bog standard image straight out of camera. I can really pull them colors, play around with the exposures, and really give it my own style. So I guess with audio and the ability to really play around with the image with these higher bit rates is the most important thing, and the biggest step, I guess, from going from like my 7S II to the kind of cameras I'm shooting on now.
No, that's really good insight. I think you mentioned it there though, right at the start of that, is that it's about understanding I suppose your vision and what you want to achieve. And actually, presumably, you don't have to be shooting with a £10,000 camera to be able to do that. There's ways and means that people getting into this, you know, the youngsters that are looking up to you and what you do, they don't have to go out and buy the exact same thing that you're going out shooting with to get a feel for how to shoot video and how to be creative and what they can do. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff out there now, isn't there, that they can pick up and get into that game.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to touch on that really quickly. So I think a lot of people put their mindset in the camera, when in my opinion they should be focusing on what's in front of the frame. So your location, your light, I think lighting's the most important thing. If you can get the right light for your scene, you are laughing. The camera doesn't really matter what camera you're shooting on. If the light's right, you're laughing. And also your camera movements tell the story. How do you want your audience to feel by the movement of the camera? So yeah, I've just really tried to exaggerate the importance of the stuff that's in front of the camera and what you do with it. The camera really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, you can end up being all the gear and no idea kind of scenario, can't you? Where yeah, you think that because you've gone and bought all of this amazing you know, FX9 and all the rest of it, it suddenly makes you a filmmaker, which, you know, we all know it doesn't. But yeah, I think obviously as people progress and evolve, they can then appreciate what those step ups can do for them, and what more they can achieve with what they do. I guess that leads us in very nicely. It's about time we saw some of your work. So I think, yeah, we wanted to get an understanding from you again with this this project that you worked on. How long ago was it now?
I worked on Sky on Fire in October, so October last year. So that was kind of the last big project I've done before we went into more strict lockdowns.
Okay.
So yeah, quite a few months ago now. I wish I was still working on it now. I loved making that film.
It's an epic film. I think we should start playing the film out now so that people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah, go for it.
So James, I'm just going to share my screen here.
Yeah, go for it.
Make sure that I can get this video up and running for people.
Sure.
So here we go. Oh, start it from the beginning.
Obviously, you get a much better experience online, but this should at least give people a good idea of what the film was about. And what I've done. Do you want me to go over the film and kind of the ideas for it?
Yeah, please.
Right, so this film, Sky on Fire, was essentially about a memory that I had, because I went to a place called Madeira. It's a little island just off the coast of Portugal. Absolutely stunning. They call it like the Hawaii of Europe. And I went there for the first time with two friends, just to go and shoot as like a bit of fun. We had a spare few days and we wanted to go away and do some shooting, and we went there. And I had this like mad experience where we went to the top of this cliff, and at the right time, in a place called Pico de Herrero, the sun sets at just the right spot and it shines through the clouds, because you're actually above the clouds, and it looks like the sky is on fire, and it is one of the most incredible things I've ever seen, and it kind of really took my breath away, and that really stuck with me for a very long time. And that feeling, that memory that I had, I wanted to go and make a film about me having that memory. So this particular film is about a guy who kind of finds himself on this island and witnesses this amazing kind of phenomenon that happens on the island. And then we actually see him down on the beach, and the whole story element is that he's unfolding this memory that he's had, this feeling, this moment, and he's essentially writing it down for us. And then you see at the end of the film, we kind of give away that it was a memory, and he puts the note in a bottle and then throws it out to sea for someone else to discover one day, you know. So that was essentially the bare bones of the story for this. I just wanted to recreate an emotion or a moment that I had in my life that really took my breath away. And you'll see here where this is actually my friend Luke. Massive shout out to him for acting the way he did. But this was in Madeira, and the sky just looks so incredible, and it takes your breath away. So yeah, that was Sky on Fire. Obviously shot on the Sony FX6, which I've got here, which I've had now for I think I've had it for about 5 months. Incredible camera. Love the image. The internal ND filters are unbelievable. Yeah, I just love shooting on that. What an experience that film was to make, man. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the visual representation that you get across that, it's very impressive. But I really do encourage people to go and see that in its kind of native form with the audio behind it as well, because the audio really makes it stand out as well. I love the fact that you had such an amazing opportunity to have all that mist and murk and so on, because I think that really then helps to, when you get to that Sky on Fire bit at the end, it really helps for that to punch through even more. So I love the way that you kind of told the story there.
Yeah, I wanted with that. I wanted to show our subject going through all of these different environments. So it kind of added to the story, it added to the journey, as it were, to build these different scenes on top of each other to essentially exaggerate the journey. Because the island's only a tiny little island, but there's so many different environments on that island, and I wanted to show the subject in all of these environments to lengthen this story and increase the journey, as it were. So yeah, there's a place called the Fog Forest there. It's called Fanau. Incredible, one of my favorite places I've ever shot. Just so moody, so cool, because the clouds roll in and it kind of covers this forest, and it just looks amazing.
Yeah, it genuinely had that kind of ethereal kind of mood and vibe going. So
you should go, mate. Honestly, I can't recommend it enough. If you can get out there and go to that fog forest, it's.
I think I'd go anywhere at the moment. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, no, I mean, but that's the thing. Like watching something like that, it does make you go, oh, it's a place that I hadn't thought about or anything like that. But then seeing that, it's a magical looking place. And that's, I guess that's the beauty of this filmmaking. You can touch people with it and get people to feel something for it. I just wanted to quickly remind, I didn't do my my admin at the start. I wanted to remind people that they can ask questions throughout using the chat function, and we'll come back and we'll ask James some of those questions towards the end. So if you do have anything, do throw it in there. But yeah, going back to the project then, James. So that was something that was something that you just decided that it was a story that you wanted to go and tell, and something that you had some time to go and do, or was there a specific kind of a drive behind why you went to do that?
Well, I think originally it was, I got the opportunity to kind of use the FX6 for the first time, you know, so I wanted to find a way and tell a story that would expose all of the elements of the FX6, you know. So for me, the 15 stops of dynamic range, the internal ND filter was one of the biggest things, and play around with that 10-bit color. So that was something that I wanted to kind of find these different elements for. But in terms of the creative, I wanted to kind of match up a few different things that I kind of experienced over the last few years. And one was meeting a friend his name's Luke Jackson Clark. He's actually the guy that I managed to get to act for me, a friend of mine. I went on a trip to Scotland with him, and just his enthusiasm for seeing Old Man's Store in Scotland was just like mind-blowing to me. And it really, I don't know, it kick-started something in me it just made me really admire him as a person and how much he explodes when he sees these mad scenes and starts shooting. That combined with going to Madeira and seeing this mad place that really kind of hit me powerfully. I wanted to kind of combine these two forces, as it were. And that was really the driving force for going out there and doing it. And obviously testing out the FX6, I was so fortunate to get to do that. And that camera's just a beast. I couldn't have wanted to shoot on anything better, you know.
And what sort of glass were you using on it?
I was using really simple glass. So I used the 16 to 35 G Master 2.8 and the Canon 50mm 1.8 and occasionally the 85mm 1.8. So no crazy cinema glass, because I wanted to keep it quite run and gun, quite simple, because most of the shots were handheld. There was literally just me and Luke out there, so I had no extra crew. We had to kind of keep the crew small for like COVID restrictions and things like that. So I just wanted it to be me. I wanted Luke to stay in his element, kind of be the character, be in the scene, you know. I didn't really want to bother him with any of the technical side of things, so I looked after it all myself, just making sure that cameras, batteries, lenses, not going too crazy on all the gear, really small gimbal, the crane, I use the crane 2S and the crane 3S there, just keeping it really light, run and gun, so that we could get to all of these mad locations like the waterfalls, the hikes that we had to do. God, I couldn't really be lugging loads of really heavy glass out there, you know. So yeah, kept it nice and simple. You're on mute, mate.
Sorry, there you go. Yeah, did you have any sliders or anything like that, or again, were you trying to really minimise how much of that type of stuff you were taking and just putting the creativity in yourself?
I used the slider once. It was only like a little tiny slider, and I had it on the beach, which was a nightmare. You'll see one of the not the opening shot, the closing shot where we push into Luke sitting on the beach,
Yes.
where we see him from behind. So at the start, we've got a shot pulling out, pushing in, and then at the end, we've got a shot pulling out. So we're coming into the scene, and then we left the scene by pulling away. That was kind of the movement that I wanted to give off, and the kind of philosophy behind the camera movement. So in terms of sliders, they were the only two shots I used the slider for. Other than that, gimbal and handheld. I wanted most of it to be handheld. I wanted to travel with him. You know, I didn't want to be looking in. Like usually when I'm on a tripod, I feel like we're looking in at a subject. I wanted the audience to be there with him as he was experiencing it. You know, so I wanted to come close, handheld. No real long range shots. I wanted to be quite close up to him, feel like we've got that connection with him the whole time. You know, so that's why I wanted to shoot it that particular way.
No, that makes perfect sense. And like you say, the remoteness and the restrictions and stuff, travel light, keep it all very very tight on that front makes perfect sense. Something that really interests me is understanding, like, so for that shoot, how much actual footage are you recording versus, you know, so that clip we showed is obviously I think it's about 2 minutes 40 long. How much footage are you recording in the production of this to get to that 2 minutes 40?
I don't know the exact amount of kind of minutes shot, but the thing with that particular film is we're very weather dependent. So I had to get that moment where the sky looked like it was on fire because of the sun. And me and Luke we done 14 sunrises and sunsets, because we were there for a week, and we done every sunrise, every sunset to try and get the perfect conditions. And we just got it on our last day, which, yeah, we were so lucky to get that, because I was really starting to poo myself that I wasn't going to get that shot, because I would have been in big trouble.
It changes the title of the film then, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So if we hadn't got that, I would have been in big trouble. But we managed to get it. So we was very weather dependent. So I wasn't just shooting here, there, and everywhere. I had a very structured storyboard that I knew the shots I had to get. So once I got the shots, ticked them off, I'd get the edit done. I'd get the shots that I've got and stick them in the edit that night, so that I kind of put in the pieces of the puzzle together. And if I wasn't particularly happy with a shot, I'd scrap it. Right, we're going to get that shot again, open that back up on the storyboard. So that was a bit of a benefit, you know, kind of seeing the story come to life before I've shot everything. I was slowly putting these little puzzle pieces together, that it just allowed me to come up with a few more ideas on the actual shoot as well, you know. So as much as I stick to my storyboard quite structured, I do still make some adjustments depending on if we go to a crazy location and it just makes so much more sense for the story, then I'll do that shot there, you know. So yeah, other than that, it was really weather dependent. You know, we was kind of tied down by what the island wanted to do for us instead of what we could do with it, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, what's the balance between time spent shooting versus time spent doing the edit?
Well, we was there for the week. This particular edit took me a very long time, because I wanted to get the grade perfect. I wanted a really specific look, like a really soft look, nothing really, really hard. But at the same time, I had really hard environments to shoot in. Like, for example, that sky on fire. Thank God we've obviously got 15 stops of dynamic range, because I've got the shadows from down in the rock, and then I've got the back of Luke, and I haven't got anyone with me to kind of bounce light back into Luke. I've then got to expose for the sky so that I don't blow out the sky too much, and then try and keep some exposure on the back of Luke, and then grade it all with masks and make sure I get it perfect. So there was loads of elements in that particular film in terms of the grade that made my edit like 3 times as long, you know. So I think I spent as long on the grade as I did just editing the video, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the sound design as well, so which is one of the things I spend so much time on, because I think the audio is just as important as the visuals, really.
Yeah, I love it when you share some good audio that you come across and you put it out on your Instagram stuff. There's a number of tracks now that have made it onto my recent kind of playlist just as a result of that. Nice. But yeah, audio I think is very important, isn't it?
100%.
Just wanted to touch on, before we get into some questions, just wanted to touch on, you were lucky enough, our very recently announced FX3.
Yes.
Which I actually do have one.
I have one here too.
Which is quite cool. You've obviously had a chance to have some hands-on and play with that. So what's your first impressions, James?
Well, I mean, anyone who knows about the Sony A7S Mark III knows that it massively pushed the boundaries. So we're lucky to have pretty much that exact same capabilities as a camera in a more cinema body. So for those of you for those people who shoot a lot of audio, like me, for example, I do loads of interviews, lots of performances where we're shooting with audio going in. So it saves me having to have like an external recorder. So obviously on the FX3 we've got them 2 XLR inputs, which for me is massive. I don't personally need XLRs all the time. For a lot of my shoots, I'll be shooting on my FX6, so that's when I'll use my XLRs. But for someone who hasn't got an FX6, but you're kind of in the middle of the A7S Mark III and then wanting to move up to a cinema body, I'd personally recommend getting this. But I think at the same time, if someone's got like an A7S Mark III, you've basically got the same kind of incredible video features, but this has got a much better ergonomic usage for someone who shoots a lot of video, because the A7S Mark III, I guess, is still essentially a stills camera, or it's in a stills body, but we've got all of these mounting points that we can use. We've obviously got the top handle now with all of the mounting points. I would have loved to have seen like a mount for your monitor on here, but this gives us so much more option, or so many more options now from a video perspective. And I know this sounds so stupid, but tally lights. I want every single video camera or any camera that shoots video to have massive tally lights on them, because for someone like me who does interviews, for example, I'll usually sit with my A cam. So I'll be monitoring my A cam. I know I'm recording because I've got a big tally light on it and I can see I'm recording, but I'll usually have a B cam off in the distance. And for me to see a big fat red light on it gives me a lot of confidence and doesn't send me into some kind of anxiety hole of death. I know that my camera's rolling, so that I'm getting all of them 2 different angles. But with a lot of cameras like Sony A7S Mark III, for example, you don't really, if your camera's off in the distance, you're not going to know if that camera's rolling or not. You just got to kind of trust that it is, unless you've got an operator on it, obviously. But a lot of shoots that I do, we don't always have the budget to have a second operator. So for me to have A cam, I'm rolling on, B cam, I can see off in the distance with that tally light on. It's spot on, really. So yeah, man, I love this camera. Looks the nuts. I'm really a big fan of the silver body. It just kind of breaks it up from what we've seen previously, and it kind of sets it in its own kind of category, which is nice.
Yeah, I think for me, the ergonomics feel really good on it. It feels like such a solid beast. But yeah, I love the fact the tally lights are what do it for you. That's great.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, I think before we run out of time, we should get to some questions. We've had quite a few come in. So let's start off with a question from David. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this easily or not, but what do you like most, filming or editing?
At the moment, filming, because all I've been doing is editing, obviously with COVID. I think it depends. It's a really hard question to answer, because when you're out on a shoot and everything is going the way that you thought it would go, and you're seeing the film that you already played in your head in the pre-production, I don't think there's a better feeling than that. However, when you get into the edit and you start piecing it together and you add the music and you start adding the grade, and it's all kind of this big concoction of like just amazingness just comes together. I can't put an answer on that, really. It depends on the project. If I'm out on a really crazy location and the environment's just incredible and we've got the perfect conditions, I'm loving it. But at the same time, when everything comes together in the edit so perfectly, there is such like a wholesome feeling about that. So I'm so sorry, Dave, I can't help you out there.
A bit kind of aligned with that. Kobe's asked, do you find that the story can sometimes change during editing as well?
Absolutely. And I think you'll find that a lot of that will come down, well, for me in my films, a lot of that will come down to the pacing. So I might have a film in mind that is quite like intense and fast paced telling a story, but I stick it in the edit and I start to slow it down, longer cuts, and it slowly starts to take like a more slower approach, and it might hit a little bit deeper. That's why now I tend to pick my audio. And if I've got if I'm doing like a commercial or short film that has an underlying music track on it, which obviously has a massive impact on the story and the way that we feel, I'll usually pick my track before I even go to shoot. So I know the pacing, I know the style, I know how my audience is meant to be feeling at the end. So I think if I know my track before I go and do the shoot and try and shoot this film, that's when things won't usually change in the edit. But if I haven't already selected my audio, there's a lot of room and a lot of stretchability for my edit to, move around. So yeah, I think it comes down to music. For other people, it might be to do with different things, but yeah, it does change every now and then in the edit, for sure.
Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left, James, so I'm just going to rattle through these.
Sure. I'll try.
Rob's getting his FX6 next week, lucky chap. What setup do you recommend, accessories, lenses, etc., for sort of short films? Anything you would say is a key?
Well, it depends on what kind of look you're going for, because you can get some like vintage lenses, and I know you can adapt them. A lot of cinematographers like to use different lenses because it obviously gives it a different look. But for me, I think a staple would be like the 16-35. Even I'm a really big fan of 35mm for short films. It's kind of that middle ground between a super wide and obviously your close up, and you can kind of get enough of the environment and enough of your subjects at the same time. So I'm pretty sure there's a 35mm 1.4 out at the moment, which is a beauty, but having that 16-35 range, I think is perfect, and it's great for like commercial work as well. So I'd say start with that and then go from there.
The question that came in from Keith is kind of harking back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, quantity versus quality.
Yeah.
So saying, he's a YouTuber and he feels very pressured to make a video per week. How do you balance that? Have you got any advice on how you balance that pressure of needing to keep feeding it, but also making sure that it's quality and you're not just doing it for the sake of it?
Mate, I feel that very heavily. Like I completely understand where they're coming from, and I feel the same way. I guess it's as long as you don't put all of your eggs in one basket, so you're not only creating content for YouTube and that's what you're relying on, then you can kind of relax a bit, take a back seat, because you're still doing your commercial work on the side, which is what I do. And I personally wouldn't ever just want to go YouTube. I still enjoy working with other people and working on client projects and this and that, because at the same time, you never really know where YouTube's going to go. In 4 or 5 years from now, it might not even be here and it might be something else. So you've got to kind of adapt, especially in the climate that we're in. Everything's moving so fast. I just say, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Try to keep a really healthy balance of the two.
And with regards to editing software, do you have any preference in terms of which one? Do you have a go-to that you always use, or do you use a mix?
Yeah, so I use Adobe Premiere Pro. However, a lot of people use Final Cut and DaVinci Resolve. All three are great. Premiere Pro is very laggy, very glitchy compared to the other two. The other two run very smoothly, but I've always used Premiere Pro. However, if I was starting out today, I would probably start on DaVinci Resolve. I think that the platform's just growing so well. It's actually free. So for anyone starting out, I'd definitely look at DaVinci Resolve, but Premiere Pro and Final Cut are both great stuff. They're just tools at the end of the day. They all do the same thing. Whatever works for you is the one.
And we've had a question from Jane saying, how do you create a story from a basic client brief that's not based on a story? Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, so I guess the thing that you want to do is most client briefs are to sell a product or a service. So for me, I want to try and find a way that, how can you add emotion into this product or service and then build a story around that? So for example, let's come up with something stupid. It's a cup. Yeah. You're trying to sell a cup, but you're not just trying to sell the cup. You're trying to sell the experience of what someone's having with the cup. Maybe they're on a big trip and they're really, really thirsty and they pull out a cup and they grab a drink. Oh, great. So that you're adding, it's not about the cup anymore. It's about the experience going and seeing what that cup can do for you. Sorry?
15 seconds and we're out.
I think I'll end it on that then.
So James, thank you very much. Amazing insight as ever. I think, yeah, do you want to just share where people can grab your see that Sky on Fire film in its entirety and
Yeah,
find
sure.
out a bit more about you?
So if you want to go and check out Sky on Fire, just type in on YouTube James Matthews. It's on my channel, and it's also on the Sony camera channel, I think. But yeah, if you want to check out any of my work, you can go to James Matthews on YouTube. My Instagram page is James Matthews Media. It's a bit more casual over there because I like to have a little bit of fun and experiment with Instagram. But for more serious stuff, head over to YouTube. And thanks everyone for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks so much for your time, James. Really appreciate it. It's always very inspiring talking with you. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Maybe catch some of the other talks on the show. But thanks a lot.
Amazing. Have a good time at the show, guys.